Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lending America. Thank you so much for joining us today. On today's episode, I invited here immigration attorneys Ed Marie Medina and Amara Neres. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Who work in Alex Hanna Law Firm to talk about immigration stuff, all the questions you guys ask me, especially about working in the US and living in the US, and they might have legal answers for us. So, welcome, girls.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. So, let's get right to it. My first question would be, how can people come to the US and work here?
Okay, so there is definitely a lot of paths that people can come to United States. However, if you're asking how they can come and work, then we will have to, it will depend. Like they can come via sponsor, they can come through a work visa. There are also other options that they can come and give them a work authorization. Like for example, they're seeking asylum, they here on a temporary protected status, but they already here in the United States to apply for that. Or they come here in a family petition and during their adjustment, the adjustment will normally give them a work authorization. Also, humanitarian paroles would give you a work authorization as well. You wanna?
Yeah, as Marie said, there's so many methods to come to the United States legally to work, right? It's important that you seek an immigration attorney with the facts of your case. For example, I have family members in the US, right? I have my mom and dad, or my spouse, or my fiance is in the US, right? How can I make it to the US legally and then obtain work authorization? Your parents or family members can petition for you. Your employers can petition for you, or sponsor you, is the correct terminology. You can come here on a student visa. Although you're not allowed to work, you are allowed to be legally in the United States. And while you're not in school, right, you're able to work for the summers or get some sort of employment like that. There's exchange visas that allow you to come to the United States and kind of have employment while you're here in the United States. As Emery said, there are also avenues that while you're already in the United States, you're able to get work authorization as you're seeking migratory relief in the United States, perhaps through asylum or temporary protected status, or you're here on a humanitarian parole for 2 years, you're able to work like that way too. But coming to the United States to work is very feasible for an array of people, right? It's not that you need to work here illegally. No, there's actually tons and tons of avenues to get to the United States and be able to work here legally.
You mentioned humanitarian parole.
Hmm.
Can you elaborate on that?
Sure.
Some countries that right now they're having a humanitarian crisis, and you can start the process, or your family can start the process to sponsor you to request a humanitarian parole. We also have human reunification parole. We also have family reunification paroles, and once that's approved, it will give you a authorization to be able to come to United States.
Yeah, so if we're not mistaken, the countries that are participating in that
Yes.
program right now is Venezuela, Cuba, Nicaragua. I believe now Colombia is part of that,
Yes.
El Salvador, so the USCIS website has the countries that are now participating in this humanitarian parole process. So there's a form which you fill out to the United States government, and they're allowing people of those nations, citizens of those nations, to come into the United States on 2-year parole. So you're going to come in through the airport, you're going to be paroled into the United States, you're going to be given a social security number and a work authorization because your country is going through an urgent humanitarian crisis. So, if you're a citizen of that country and you are going through an urgent humanitarian crisis, you should seek the avenue to come to the United States on a humanitarian parole.
How about work visa? What are the ways how to get them?
So, there are a couple different kinds of work visas, right? There are work visas that are sponsored by employers, which are most of the work visas. They're work visas for, well, they're not really called work visa, but employment-based visas, right? That are for extraordinary individuals, right? You can
Yeah.
come also work for a company here in the United States if you're a manager or in a high position in a company abroad. Really does depend on your specific situation, right? So it's important that when you do speak to an immigration attorney about coming to the United States on an employment-based visa, that we're able to look at your curriculum, all of your achievements, the companies that you have worked for abroad, whether or not you can be a transfer or you can come here on the H-1B, it through a sponsorship program through your employer, right? Those would be things that we were looking to when we do a consultation with a client to see your resume the places in which you have worked, your achievements, are you have you been published? Have you done any significance for the career that you're in? How long have you worked in it? Do you have a master's degree in that field, a doctoral degree, right? So that, the work visas, they really do differ, I guess is the word. It is specific to the person that is applying for that employment based visa. We're really going to have to take a look at your employment in its entirety to see which visa you qualify for. But there's a lot of employment based categories. A lot of people fit into these employment based visas. We really just have to see, what have you done in your career? What have you done in your employment to see which visa is, unique and narrowly tailored to you.
How does one know if they have any extraordinary abilities? Should they reach out to probably a law firm first to find out if they qualify?
Definitely. So you should always speak. Attorneys can give you a very, very, very good idea of whether or not you qualify for these extraordinary visas, right? But usually, the extraordinary visas, you have higher education, you have been working in that field for a very long time, you're known in your field, and that kind of thing. Not everybody though, so that's just some people, but when you ask, how do you know you have extraordinary ability? Everyone thinks they have extraordinary ability, right? Everybody thinks I'm the best at what I do, which is great. And I'm sure you are the best at what you do, right? But it's interesting to speak to an attorney because once an attorney is able to really take a look at your resume and everything that you have accomplished in your field, and on all the degrees in which you've obtained, they can tell you, hey, this is the best visa for you. And we're going to go ahead and put together this visa packet and be able to get you to come to the United States on this employment based visa, which ultimately leads to residency in the United States, So
Hmm.
that's not just for people with higher degrees. You can have an extraordinary ability if you're a great musician. You didn't have a degree, right? Or you didn't get a degree, but you're an extraordinary musician. You're an extraordinary athlete or you're an extraordinary um, author. It depends. It really does, right? But we really do have to look at your resume and the things that you have accomplished in the course of your career to tell you, okay, you fit in this extraordinary category or that extraordinary category, so I think the best way, if you do think you're extraordinary, everybody, is to speak to an attorney, say, hey, look, this is my resume, this is all the things that I've accomplished in my career, do I qualify for these kinds of visas? Do I qualify for a visa that I don't need an employer to sponsor me? Can I sponsor myself because I have such an extraordinary ability that I now merit national interest, that I can get a waiver of the sponsorship. So I do think and I recommend, that if you are, a person in your career that you've been doing it for a long time and you do feel like you have achieved significant accomplishments in your career, to speak to an attorney and say, do I qualify for any of these extraordinary visas in the United States?
What if I am not very extraordinary and if I'm not from the country that is eligible for the humanitarian parole? What then?
Well, there's other options for you. Let's say, maybe you have family, like immediate family. Let's say your mom or your dad or a brother or a sister and you're abroad. They can do a start a family petition. And once that's approved, you can do your consular process and come in the legal way to the United States. Also, we have other processes like, you're engaged to a U.S. citizen, you can come through a fiance
Fiance
visa.
visa.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and you can come to United States based on that. We also have for people that want to maybe do some exchange, like G1s and G2s. You of course you can come, but you cannot overstay. You have to stay until the visa is available. But that's other ways that you can come. However, they are more limited, and you will have to return unless circumstances change that you might be able to change your status while you still have a status. And that is very important to people to understand that you cannot change status if your status already like expire. For example, let's say that my visa expires in 6 months, and I intend to change it maybe for a student visa, and I'm talking very general. I cannot wait until it's expired for me to change that status. I have to do it within when it's like it's still I'm still on status and it's still not expired. But definitely there's a lot of ways for people to be able to come here legally, and then there's other ways of people that may able to come looking for asylum because they're fleeing like a lot of very terrible things that are happening in their country.
Just so go
Um,
ahead and jump on her point. You asked like, what if I don't feel like I have extraordinary ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do I get to the United States, and how do I work legally in the United States, right? This is not something that is available to everyone, but you can come here on a student visa, right? You're able to study here in the United States and get to the point where you feel like you're gonna be able to be sponsored by an employer already here in the United States. So, if you're thinking, well, I haven't achieved anything in my career, or I'm not, at the point in my career where I feel like I can get any of these extraordinary visas, or, I don't merit extraordinary ability yet, you know, think about coming here on a student visa. Think about coming here to study and seeing if you can then go ahead and work on and build on the extraordinary ability that you already have, maybe from your country, and able to study and get those degrees and be able to be
yeah.
sponsored by an employer, or and that kind of thing. So although the United States doesn't have too many options, for people without extraordinary ability, not to say that that's you. I know that everybody has extraordinary ability, like I said. Um, there are ways to come to the United States to study and maybe build on that, right? And be here on a non-immigrant visa category, but be able to build on it and then maybe see the avenues in which you can then change status, or adjust your status to that of an immigrant, of a legal permanent resident.
Yes.
So for those seeking those avenues, as you said, family petitions are great. Like I said, we're not marrying a U.S. citizen is great, or being engaged to a U.S. citizen is great. But if you do feel like you want to come and learn and grow, then the student visa is very available to you to come study in the United States.
Is there an age limit for the student visa?
No,
You can be 60, you can
as
come
long
on.
as you're enrolled in some sort of
Yeah,
degree, yeah, you can be 60 here on a student visa. You're
that's
doing your master's
awesome.
degree, yeah, or
Okay.
your doctoral
And
degree. I would
yes.
think that you would maybe need a master's degree here in the United States before you start your doctoral, but I'm not 1,000% sure.
That's great
Yeah,
though. Yeah.
but yeah, you can be 60 years old here on a student visa, studying
Mm-hmm.
here in the United
Yeah.
States, building on your extraordinary ability, on your degrees and your knowledge, to be able to maybe get a position in which an employer says, hey, wait a second, you're actually the kind of employee that we want at our firm, or that we want at our business, or our corporation. You have the degrees, now you have the college, um, knowledge, or the education that we need, so we're going to go ahead and sponsor you. So there are those ways too for you to start
Yes.
thinking. Don't be discouraged just because you don't have enough time work, that you're not meant to be here in the United States. There's definitely avenues for you to be here in the United States and then be able to transition into a resident here when you
Mm-hmm.
get here.
So, and Marie, you've mentioned overstaying visa.
Yes.
What are the consequences of people who overstay their visa?
If you overstay your visa, first, you're gonna start accumulating illegal presence, and that is gonna activate bars. What are the bars? The bars that you're not gonna be allowed to come to the United States and be in the United States for a period of time. If you're here, you're here in a time that is more than 6 months, you're gonna be barred for 3 years. If you stay more than a year, then you're gonna be barred for 10 years. So the longer you stay in the United States, the longer the longer it's gonna be and the harder it's gonna be for you to be able to adjust or to look for a pathway for you to be here legally in the United States, because you're gonna face those bars. Of course, there are some waivers. For example, let's say you're married to a United States citizen and you enter illegally, or let's say you enter and you overstay. There's waivers that will give you how do you say that?
The ability to be able to continue
Yes,
with your
to
membership.
continue to be here, but you have to apply for those waivers. Those waivers are not easy. You need to show extreme hardship to that U.S. citizen relative that is gonna qualify. Not everyone qualifies for that. For example, let's say I'm petitioning my mom and my mom is here and I'm a U.S. citizen, but my mom is not. My mom is not gonna qualify for that waiver. Normally, it's husbands or parents the ones who qualify for that type of waiver. There's pathways and there's waivers, but not everyone can go through that pathway. So we don't encourage anyone to overstay their visas, because then it's gonna be more harder for them if they want to come through another pathway, or maybe they will get sponsored in the future. Whatever the case might be, it's gonna be more harder for them because they're facing a bar.
Which visa leads to a green card? Because I know that there are visas that don't lead to green card, right?
So there's a difference between an immigrant visa and a non-immigrant visa, right? So if you come in here on a non-immigrant visa, that visa does not lead you to a green card unless something else happens, and to keep in very simple terms. Let's say you enter here on a tourist visa, right, which is a B2. That's a non-immigrant visa, or a student visa. It's a non-immigrant visa. But you marry a US citizen, through that you can get a green card, right? Because the US citizen is going to petition for you, right? You're going to adjust status inside the country. So all non-immigrant visas in theory don't lead to a green card, right? Because they're here just for you have non-immigrant intent. When you come in with a non-immigrant visa, you have to show non-immigrant intent. You're not going to get a green card because you're here just as a non-immigrant. I'm not immigrating to the United States. If you come in here in an immigrant visa, which it sounds kind of, it sounds very like simple, but it's that immigration so complex, but if you come here on an immigrant visa, the purpose of coming in on an immigrant visa, for example, if I come here sponsored by my parent petitioned me, right? I got the visa because my parents petitioned me and I got everything approved. I'm coming here on an immigrant visa, right? I'm the child of a United States citizen. I'm coming in on an immigrant visa. As soon as I come in, right, I'm able to get a green card, within coming into the country. So it really does depend. I think every situation is specific depending on what's going on in your life. Even if you come here on a non-immigrant visa, you can be eligible, I guess is the correct terminology, to get a green card. But if you come on here on an immigrant visa, which are the employment-based visas, the family petition visas, those immigrant visas, you are going to be eligible for a green card right away.
Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
What are the rights and responsibilities of the US immigrants?
Okay, I'm gonna jump in this. First, pay your taxes. Second, do not commit any crime or any even traffic violations. People think that getting a ticket for a red light is not that big of a deal, but it is, because one of the things that you need to prove, let's say that you want to change your status and become a legal permanent resident, you need to prove good moral character, and you have like a lot of traffic violations, that is gonna look suspicious to the USCIS officer. So try to, like comply with the law, pay your taxes. You always need to pay your taxes.
Stay out of trouble.
Stay out of trouble. Do not work without authorization. That is another one. What else?
That actually brings me to the next question I wanted to ask. What happens if somebody works without a work permit?
It is very
Yes.
important not to violate. So working without authorization is actually a big immigration violation, right? So you're not allowed to work without authorization. It's clear point. It's simple, right? You're here on the terms of your visa, or here on the terms of what you told immigration officers that you were here to do. So if you're working without authorization, it could make you ineligible for other forms of relief down the line. And if you work without authorization, leave the country, and then try to come back into the country, and U.S. officials find out that you worked without the authorization, you can be barred from not coming into the country. They can send you back home
Or
and
they
say
can deport
they
you?
can deport. They can
Yes.
put you in those expedited removal proceedings. They're not going to let you come in anymore because you've violated the terms of your visa. So the United States takes that very seriously. Working without authorization is a very serious immigration violation. You have to abide by the terms of your visa. So we do recommend that if you do not have work authorization, speak to an attorney to see, is work authorization available to me, because I do want to work with authorization in the country. It's great to work with authorization in the country, and we understand that everybody needs to make money and find a way to survive, right? But working without authorization in the context of immigration is a big immigration violation, and you should not do it, because there are migratory and immigration consequences for you if you do work without authorization, and if immigration officials find out that you work without authorization. And even more, when you are seeking status, or change of status, or different
Yes.
immigration relief, it's a question there. Have you
Yes.
ever worked in the United States without authorization? And you cannot lie. So it's very important. There are big consequences to working without authorization. And I do think that if you are in a position where you say, hey, I need to work, I want to work, but I'm in the US and I don't have a work permit, speak to an immigration attorney, see what your options are to maybe get that work permit, and be able to work with authorization in the country.